There's one mistake that quietly destroys more retail brands than anything else. It's not bad packaging, it's not weak branding, it's not even poor product quality. It's entering retail before proving velocity. That single decision of entering too early, scaling too fast, chasing placement instead of performance, that's where most brands lose control of their business. And it's for simple reasons. There's widespread belief that getting into retail is the win. It feels like validation, it feels like momentum, it feels like growth. But retail does not reward entry, it rewards movement. And movement is measured in one very simple metric: units sold per store per week. If your product doesn't move, it doesn't matter how great it looks, it doesn't matter how much you spent to get there, it doesn't even matter how excited you were when the purchase order came in. It will be replaced. Now, let's ground this in reality with actual numbers. Across consumer packaged goods industry, roughly 80% of new products fail within the first 12 to 18 months in retail. Large chain environments, failure can be even higher, especially for emerging brands without established demand, because most large retailers evaluate products within 30 to 60 days. And if your product doesn't meet the velocity thresholds in that initial window, it's either marked down, moved to a different shelf, or removed entirely. Now, what are those velocity thresholds? In most categories, the minimum expectation is 1 to 2 units per store per week. In more competitive categories, it's usually 3 to 5 units per store per week. And if we translate that into business reality, if you're in 300 stores and you're selling 1 unit per store per week, that's 300 units per week. At wholesale pricing of $5, that's $1,500 a week. It sounds fine until you factor in production, freight, overhead, marketing, slotting fees, merchandising. Now take the 300 stores at 4 units per week, that's 1,200 units per week. Same stores, same products, completely different outcome. And that's the difference between a struggling brand and a scalable one. Now here's where most founders go wrong. They never test whether they can hit those numbers before scaling. Instead, they focus on chasing purchase orders, and they focus on getting into as many stores as possible, as quickly as possible. But a purchase order without sell-through is not revenue. It's a liability. If inventory hitting the shelves is going to be discounted, returned, or replaced, that's going to be an expense. And if we walk through the financial structure of that, in large retail, initial order production runs are usually between 25,000 to 100,000 units. But before you have the real data, before you have proven demand, on top of that, you may face slotting fees ranging from 5 to 25,000 per SKU per region, promotional requirements taking 10 to 20% of gross revenue, and chargebacks reducing revenue by 3 to 10%. Freight costs are absorbed by the brand. Payment terms are 60 to 120 days out. And if you layer all of this together, most brands unknowingly operate at near a break-even, even in negative margin during their first big retail push. Now, if you compare that to independent retail, opening orders between 300 to 1,500 per store, reorders on actual performance often within 7 to 21 days, no slotting fees, no promotions, minimal compliance, faster feedback loops. You're going to know exactly what's going to happen sooner. And it's not just a different channel, it's a completely different risk structure. Because if you have a brand that doesn't succeed and fails in the store, you're able to take action. You're able to define the velocity target before entering retail. If your product retails for $9.99, your goal should be 2 to 4 units per store per week in independent retail. That means 20 to 40 in weekly retail sales revenue. Now, if you reverse that into your wholesale model, let's say the cost of goods are $2. You sell to a distributor at $4.50. The distributor retails the product at $6, and the retailer sells it at $9.99. That creates a sustainable margin structure. And once you apply velocity, you have 25 stores at 3 units per week. That's 75 units per week. At $4.50 wholesale, that's 330 per week. And if you scale that to 100 stores, it's 1,300 a week. But now the model starts working, because once the product moves, step 2 is the controlled placement. You start with 10 to 25 independent stores, not 500, not 1,000, 10 to 25. And those stores, they should be carefully selected, because you want stores where the owner is engaged, where the product category fits your product, where staff interacts with the customers. It's not about reach, it's about learning. Now let's look at real examples. Perfect Bar built their brands going through sampling in gyms, small retailers. They created demand face to face. They refined their product through real conversations. Who Kitchen, they built boutique retail and their own storefront. They controlled their environment. They understood their customer deeply, and they refined their pricing and positioning in the stores before expanding. Shops did the same thing. They did it through independent natural food stores. They tested their packaging. They tested their pricing. They validated repeat purchases before scaling. They didn't guess, they tested. Now, the third step is activation. And this is where most brands tend to stumble because they assume that getting on the shelf is enough. It's not. Shelf presence without engagement is passive, and passive products don't move. You need a plan. Sampling is one of the most effective tools available. It's expensive. A 2-hour sampling session can increase sales between 200 to 400% during the initial period. If your product is selling 1 unit per week, sampling can move 3 to 4. But the difference really determines whether you stay on the shelf. If you train the staff, if you give them simple talking points, what it is, who it's for, why it matters, make it easy for them to recommend your product. Step 4. This is one of the hardest steps, but it's most important. Track everything. And you don't need expensive software. You don't need AI. You need discipline. It's important because you need to track the stores. You need to track the geography. What kind of people are coming in there? Units delivered, where they're merchandised, the units sold, reorder timing. If stores are reordering between 7 to 14 days, you're on track. If it takes 30 days or more, you need to address something to change. And here's the advantage in independent retail, and you can walk in and find out why. You can go in and see this shelf placement. You can talk to the staff. You can sit there and observe the client behavior. And before we go further, I want to pause for a moment because if you're actively building a brand, you know how many moving pieces there are. Staying organized can become overwhelming quickly. And I'm going to take a short break in the video because I want to share a tool that's made our lives a lot easier, Transcriptor. Now, the business owner's day usually revolves around meetings, team meetings, client calls, investor discussions, business development. After every meeting, it's the same story. Organizing notes, clarifying decisions, and defining who's responsible for what. That's where Transcriptor comes in. It's automatically recording your meetings, transcribes them, and then summarizes them for you and extracts the key action items. This way, it saves you time. You don't have to miss any critical details. And one of my favorite features is the talk to your meetings. You can search within your past meetings and ask questions like, what was the final decision on the product? What price did we agree upon? You get clear answers in seconds, and it's incredibly valuable for growing teams. Conversations don't disappear. They build on the memory. Plus, with enterprise security structure, the data is protected. So it's both practical, professional, and if you're tired of dealing with the post-meeting notes, I highly recommend checking out Transcriptor. If you click the link below, enter your business email, you'll receive 300 minutes for free to try it out. Now back to building your retail strategy. The 5th step is going to be refinement. You don't scale a broken model. If your product is selling 1 unit per week in 20 stores, placing it in 200 stores won't fix the problem. It will multiply the problem. You want consistent velocity. You want 2 to 3 units per store per week minimum. Only then should you expand. Step 6 is also going to be integral because it's structured scaling through independent distribution. That's what we specialize in. Independent distributors typically operate on margins between 20 to 30%. Retailers, 35 to 50%. Your pricing must support both because let's walk through a clear model. If your cost is $2, you sell to a distributor for $4.50, distributor sells it at $6 and it retails for $9.99, everybody's making money. Now compare that to a large retail where you're forced to sell it at $3.50 and fund promotions. The difference is stability. With independent retail, you're able to build relationships. Independent retail is all relationship driven. The owner matters, the distributor, the presence, follow up. Support the store. Stay consistent. Brands that succeed in retail are not just selling products, they're building networks. They're building accountability. And those networks become the foundation for scale. If there's one takeaway from this entire conversation, it's this. Do not rush into retail. Prepare for retail. Prepare your product to move. Because once you build your foundation, you can learn, adjust, improve. Once you scale, the cost goes up and the cost of being wrong becomes very real. The brands that win are not the ones that move the fastest. They're the ones that move the smartest. So prepare for success, get a good foundation, and best of luck to you.